Hi, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Hayden.
And this is
Until the End of Crime.
Hi, besties. Thank you for listening this week.
Welcome. We are hopping in the time machine and revisiting a case that we love and has what I would argue is probably one of the most
inspiring,
triumphant, and inspiring literal heroines in any of our repertoire of cases so far. And so we wanted to give you a chance, now that we are 40 some odd episodes deep, to hear a really great episode again that maybe you missed. Maybe it got caught in the shuffle of your life. Maybe you weren't listening until the end of crime yet. But we're bringing it back to you because my life has been rapidly evolving and changing with new work opportunities and new training, and Cameron's life. It doesn't feel like an evolution. It feels like some kind of massive, and not with the negative connotation, but cataclysmic event. Like, it's just huge.
It's been very fast paced, which is in part why we are giving you the opportunity to revisit this case with us. But also, it gives me the opportunity to finish packing because I leave tomorrow.
Literally tomorrow. And we were still packing shit up today. I was there for 10 minutes, but it was still happening.
It was very helpful.
Sure.
It
Maybe.
was very helpful. It helped us a lot. One, we're on day 3. We have no steam left. And you came in all fresh, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. And
I think your mom was gagged when I grabbed 4 of those big glass panels at one time.
She was.
And moved them. And she was like, those are heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like the subtext was those could break. And I was like, we're fine. We're just going to put them down. We got to roll.
Also, you are somebody who doesn't not break things.
No,
so
that's true.
Party. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to cut to the time machine. Hayden.
Yes, ma'am?
Ew. Can you think of a time where you had to really persevere?
Well, over the last 32 years, there have been a few moments where I really had to dig in and weather the storm.
Can you think of a time where you had to persevere where it was like life or death?
Life or death?
To persevere in a life or death situation.
Well, I don't know if I've ever been that close to death. The best I can think of is that...
That's crazy. I feel like we are always moments away from it.
Well, when I look back retrospectively, nothing ever seems as serious as it did in the moment.
Yeah.
But when I got really sick several years ago with all those different illnesses at once.
Oh, yeah.
It ran all the way from June through October, and my doctor thought I had all kinds of illnesses, tried all kinds of medications, was concerned that I had hepatitis or HIV or liver cancer or lymphoma. Had no idea what was wrong with me because all of my levels were so out of whack, and tests for strep throat, cultures for strep throat kept coming back negative. Tests for things like the flu and mono kept coming back negative. And finally, he hospitalized me. And I remember I called my mom and I was like, I'm going to the hospital. And she was like, oh my God, make sure you go to One End Network so you don't have to pay a big medical bill. And I had a meltdown. I was like, I just need to go to the hospital. And I went to the hospital and they ran all kinds of tests. They did a biopsy. They did every test possible. I remember one of the tests they did was for like some sexually transmitted infection, and it had a Q-tip with a rubber end and it was pokey. Like it had little spikes on it. Mm-hmm. Do you remember those like earrings?
Oh, yeah. I know.
From the 90s that were like silicone?
I think they were from later than the 90s.
Early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s.
Yeah, where they look spiky, but then when you touch them, it's like a softer material.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it looked like. It hurt like a bitch when they scraped it on my throat.
Yeah.
Which was covered in white, now that I remember. And it was so weird because they ran all those tests. They did all of those things. They did blood cultures. And nothing came back positive for most of the regular test. But whatever infection it was that they tested using that pokey Q-tip was a culture that took 2 weeks versus the standard amount of time.
Yeah.
And that's where strep throat strain F grew, which only like 35 Americans get a year. I didn't know for a long time still what was wrong with me. After I left the hospital, it was like a week and a half. An infectious disease doctor, an ENT doctor, my hospitalist, and my primary physician were able to determine that I did have strep throat, strain F, and I had mononucleosis, even though it wasn't showing up on regular tests. One of the physicians did something called a spot differential.
I was going to say, didn't you have mono?
Yes.
That, yeah.
Strep, mono, and there was something else, and I can't remember what it was.
Was it bronchitis?
I don't know, but
I remember when you were going through all of this, and it was the bronchitis was also a part of why you weren't able to be at work very much.
Right. But I was also still running 3 miles a day, which was a really crazy time in my life.
Yeah, it would never be me.
And so after all of that, and I finally found out what was wrong with me, and they gave me the craziest round of antibiotics, I was okay. But there was a moment in time when I was in the hospital that I thought I would die. A pastor had to come and visit me because I was terrified of the prospect of dying and going to hell. And when they released me and they still didn't know what was wrong with me, and I went home after the biopsy, I remember that I was really, really scared. And somehow Sherry reached out to me.
Yeah.
And talked with me about like the reality of cancer and what that might mean for me, and was just really supportive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful for that because she listened to me talk to her and cry for like 2 hours.
She's very good people.
She's great people.
Yeah.
Very giving, very generous with her time, with her compassion and listening. She's A1 in my book.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I don't think I've really ever been in a situation.
I definitely think that you still have to work to figure out what's going on and to take care of yourself. And I think that there's definitely perseverance there, especially in a time that feels so kind of hopeless.
Yes, there was some perseverance involved. I guess you're right. And had I not got it treated, if I had not received treatment, if I had not advocated, strep throat can turn into rheumatic fever. It can damage your heart. It can damage your joints. So, and I mean, there is no cure for mono.
Just gotta weather the storm there. And
yeah, strep throat can permanently damage the valves of your heart. Isn't that terrifying?
Yes. All right, I'm going to tell you a story about perseverance, or a story that involves perseverance. Mary Vincent was a skilled dancer set to perform in a show in Las Vegas, Nevada. She had plans to perform internationally, from Hawaii to Australia, and in Vegas, she was going to be the lead dancer at the Lido de Paris. This young girl was working toward fulfilling her dream of working in what was looking like it would be a promising career as a professional dancer.
What is the Lido de Paris? Is it like Paris?
Well, it's got to be at Paris, right?
Right? Yeah.
On September 29th, 1978, Mary, who was only 15 at the time, was headed to Corona, California to stay with her grandfather.
She was already that skilled of a dancer at 15?
Yes.
Wow.
I have family that lives in Corona.
Wow.
Okay, Mary had left her parents' house and planned to hitchhike her way there without any money. Her father, a military man, was on his way home and was apparently angry with Mary, according to what her sister told her. She was one of 7 children, and when her sister informed her that he was not only mad with Mary, but he had a migraine as well, she suggested that Mary run.
That's a good idea.
And she did. Yeah.
I would advise either of my siblings to do the same.
Angry specifically at her, had a migraine.
Not a good combination.
Right. So while it is unclear exactly how much progress she made getting to Corona, it is also important for me to point out that it is unclear where she started and what path she was trying to take to get there. Some accounts say she was in Sacramento or San Francisco heading to Los Angeles, and others say Las Vegas to Corona.
How was this 15-year-old just everywhere? It's weird that she had such mobility, because I always think, and of course I know we're talking about the 1970s, right? So a totally different time period. And hitchhiking, I think, was common.
Very common.
But it's odd to me that she would have the ability to traverse what sounds like pretty large distances with no kind of check or balance to her travel.
Yeah, but my dad, who grew up in California, has tales of doing this hitchhiking, I want to say from like Florida, which that's far.
In his wheelchair?
No, in the 70s.
I don't know how old he was in the 70s. He wasn't in the wheelchair yet?
18 something, 20 something. No, not until he was 24. It was 83.
I was going to have a lot more questions.
Others say she started in Berkeley. I found accounts saying she was trying to get to Interstate 5. Either way, she was working her way toward Corona on the afternoon of September 29th. She was not alone on her journey to the interstate, as she had at least 2 companions who it seems she didn't necessarily know prior to the trip, but they had become unified in their mission, watching out for each other along the way. At some point, a man driving a van pulled over and asked if they needed a ride. He said he was only able to accommodate 1 passenger, and Mary's 2 allies declined the offer. But the 15-year-old wanted to take him up on it, despite the protests of her companions. Mary disregarded their insistence that she not go, and chose to take the man up on his offer.
So her new buddies said, no, don't do this.
Right.
Okay.
But she rationalized, I think if we call back to the story you told me last week, she rationalized that this 51-year-old man had to be safe. He looked old enough to be her grandfather. It's attributing those characteristics of an older person is sweet and kind and doesn't have any malintent.
Okay. Oh, those assumptions about age.
Yeah. So this man's name was Lawrence Singleton, and he lived in a neighboring town. He told Mary he needed to swing by his house before proceeding to Interstate 5, and she fell asleep in the meantime. You can imagine, probably dry and hot, and
she's probably exhausted from hitchhiking all day.
Right. She's been walking and or just having her guard up because they were watching each other's backs and all of that.
I also love falling asleep in a car. I think it's so relaxing.
I can't do it.
Oh, if I'm a passenger and it's a nice smooth ride, asleep.
I am a stomach sleeper. So if I can't be like face down, I cannot go to sleep. When she awoke, she pointed out that they had passed the interstate. The road signs indicated they were going in the wrong direction. The driver acknowledged his mistake and gladly rectified it. They turned around, got onto the interstate, and headed south. Along the way, he pulled over in order to relieve himself on the side of the road. Mary got out as well because at this point, she realized that something was off about him and the situation.
Like what?
I mean, waking up and him going the wrong direction. I don't know. It's just one of those gut feeling things.
Yeah. I understand gut feelings.
Mm-hmm.
That intuition of, oh, something is not right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what she was feeling.
Yes.
Okay.
And she noticed that her shoelace needed to be retied because she was about to run.
Well, that's responsible and practical.
Mm-hmm. So she bent down to tie her shoe because she figured if I'm about to run, I need my shoes to be on my feet.
That does tend to help.
Yeah. It was then that this man, whose grandfatherly appearance had made Mary feel comfortable enough to travel with him, struck her in the head with a sledgehammer.
A sledgehammer?
A sledgehammer. You heard me.
It's a bit of overkill. A sledgehammer?
Yeah, a sledgehammer.
To break her skull? Or
to incapacitate her.
That's wild.
Yeah. But I think that I am not a sledgehammer connoisseur by any stretch of the imagination, but I have seen stretchhammers. I've seen sledgehammers that are not sized like they are in a cartoon.
Oh, well, I don't mean like a mallet. I'm talking about like they're about the width or the girth or circumference. Yeah, I've seen sledgehammers that have like a wild circumference. Like most of them are pretty thick.
I guess, but I don't think that that's the case here. I think this is a smaller sledgehammer.
Also a regular hammer?
No, not a hammer.
Okay. Well, sledgehammer has a definitive connotation.
It does have a connotation. I agree.
Okay.
I agree. It does feel like overkill, like you said. It feels like that. But
well, and I mean, I guess it's not necessarily overkill depending on what he's going to do, but it seems extreme.
Yeah, it definitely disoriented her, which is what I assume was the intent. But it did not cause her to lose consciousness.
Well, some sledgehammers are rubber. They're not necessarily like a metal sledgehammer. They're made of rubber. Have you seen those before?
Yes.
So,
have they always been around? I'm thinking 1978 sledgehammers. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know the history of the sledgehammer.
I don't even know the application of a sledgehammer or how it necessarily differs from a hammer.
Well, I think a hammer's
or
primary
a ball
purpose.
peen hammer.
I think that hammer's primary purpose is
Why did primary sound so weird every time? Primary. That was weird.
You know what? I don't know. I know sledgehammers are primarily used for destruction and
Construction?
destruction.
Destruction.
Yeah, to take out walls and stuff.
You use hammers to put walls together, too.
You use a hammer to put a wall together. You use a sledgehammer to deconstruct a wall.
Wow. We teach you a lot here at Until the End of Crime.
Well, I don't even know that we've taught ourselves very much on this case, on this hammer-sledgehammer debate.
Okay.
So at this point, he has hit her in the head with a sledgehammer, and he forced her into the van. He tied Mary's hands behind her back.
Okay, I'm sorry. He's in a van and he didn't have room for 2 more passengers. Like, that should have been Red Light City. I'm not victim blaming, right? I don't think that Oh my God.
I'm going to put you in rice.
I don't know. I do not think Mary Vincent was 15 at this time. And of course, critical thinking skills were not there.
It is not her responsibility to not attack.
Exactly. Absolutely not. It's weird because
maybe everyone's responsibility is to just not attack anybody else.
Yeah, that sounds like a good solid rule.
I love it.
I wonder how hard her 2 companions pushed her to not go. Granted, I have the hindsight of age and era with which I live in. Mm-hmm. But if I had someone caution me against riding with someone, I think I would, especially if it's 2 people. But I'm also not the kind to separate from someone who is with me, even if it's just like a random transient counterpart.
But they were also strangers to her. It wasn't. So it's a difficult, like, everybody in the scenario is a stranger. He's like, I've got space for 1. I don't have space for all 3. Who knows how many sledgehammers he had back there? He maybe only had space for 1.
Right. Sledgehammer salesman. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he gets her into the back of the van.
Mm-hmm. Ties her hands behind her back, tore off her clothes, and proceeded to sexually assault her. Then he drove off with her still bound in the back of the van. He drove until he came to a canyon where he pulled over, sexually assaulted Mary again, and sodomized her.
And she was awake and aware.
She was fighting back, begging for her life, asking if he was going to let her go free. She was saying, please let me go. I'm not going to tell anybody. Please let me go. She said this over and over and over again. And he spent the night repeatedly sexually assaulting her until she saw the sun coming up and he fell asleep. But she was still bound, and he had bound her so tightly that she couldn't get away.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So after he woke back up, he cut the ties from her hands and he asked her, you want to be set free? Because she had been, just like I said, over and over again, pleading for her life. And at that point, he took a hatchet, and while Mary remained fully conscious, he hacked at her left arm.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Mary said that she felt as if she was falling, and so she grabbed onto him as tight as she could with her left arm, but she couldn't figure out why she was still falling if she was holding him for stabilization. And when she looked down, she noticed that the attacker had cut off her left arm right below the elbow.
My God.
And then he did the same to her right. Again, she was fully conscious the entire time, and she said she saw the attacker trying to fling something from his arm, and she realized that her arm was still clamped onto his. The hand was grasped tight, and he was trying to get it free from his arm.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Was she not in unbearable pain? How did she not pass out?
I think there was probably a level of adrenaline that was at play. She also had been attacked all night long.
That's true.
So I imagine her body was in shock and definitely in survival mode.
Right. Okay.
So at this point, he believed that Mary was dead, or as good as dead. So he dragged her across to the edge of a cliff and shoved her naked, mutilated body over the edge of a 30-foot drop. And then he had the audacity to tell her that she was free now.
Oh my God. What a sick fuck.
I think that really sums it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yes.
Unimaginable.
Yes.
Could I have persevered? Probably not, if I'm being honest.
Well, Mary had been brutalized, assaulted, and left for dead, and her body was in shock after the amputation of her arms. So she did not realize that the fall had caused her to have 4 fractured ribs. Fortunately, no other broken bones that would have prevented her from what she did next. With unimaginable strength and composure, she had the wherewithal to pack the ends of her arms into the mud to stem the bleeding. She then walked up the incline to the side of the highway, all the while holding her arms over her head so that, this is a quote, so that the blood and muscles would not fall out.
This girl was smart for being 15 and just brutalized and mutilated.
Well, I think it goes along with the question you asked before. You questioned at the beginning her level of skill in dance at her age. And I think that this all speaks to it. She also is a forward thinker. Dad is mad. Dad has a migraine. Dad is mad at me. I'm going to get out of town. I'm going to go.
Yeah, I think... So yes, she is those things, right? And obviously there's a level of intuition that she possesses. And I think to be that skilled of a dancer, you have to have a knowledge of the body. I just, with so many things going on at one time, to have just been, again, brutalized and mutilated and left for dead. And to know I need to pack these wounds and I need to keep my arms above my head. That's, well, like you said, that requires a great level of composure. And I don't know where a 15-year-old gets that from.
I believe that when you're in a situation that is so dire, some people talk about having this like sense of clarity,
right?
And I guess being able to prioritize certain things to get through the moment at the end of the day.
But I think that's like a fear response, right? Like freeze, fawn, fight, flight. And I think a lot of people in her situation could have easily not.
Not everybody would have left the situation the way that she did.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, what she did was extraordinary.
There's a reason that he thought that he was leaving her for dead.
Right.
Mary walked in the direction of the faint traffic she could hear, thinking that she had to keep going to do what she could to keep this monster from attacking someone else. I think that's a pretty common note from survivors, is they want to survive to prevent anybody else from going through what it is that they're going through.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of strength that can be found in that idea. So at this point, which she had to be operating solely on adrenaline.
How did she even have enough blood left to do anything if her arms both were jaggedly hatcheted off her body? It's just great. It's just wild. It's wild. It's incredible and it's wild.
Yeah, the human body is amazing. I don't know when the last time she had eaten was or anything like that. Who knows
how much blood was left inside of her body.
Right. So she walked down the road hoping that a car would drive past and offer her assistance. She walked and she walked and she walked.
Were cars passing her by?
For hours, Mary walked. And finally, she felt a sense of relief when she saw a vehicle, a red convertible. The passengers of the vehicle saw Mary, naked, covered in blood, with maimed arms in the air, and they were in disbelief and horrified at what they were seeing, so they kept driving. And Mary, who I can only imagine was feeling so many emotions as this glimmer of hope faded into shrinking taillights, continued to walk.
I don't even continue walking when there's nothing wrong with me.
She walked another 3 miles before she saw hope again in the form of headlights.
Oh my God. This poor girl.
So strong.
Yeah.
The couple driving this car stopped and offered her aid, wrapping her arms in towels and going to call for help.
Thank God someone finally stops and helps.
Yeah. I wonder if the people in the red convertible would have done things differently. I'm sure they heard about this, but if they realized that it was them and if they, I don't know. It's hard to know what anybody would do.
It's impossible to say. It really is. I don't know if there's any way to know.
It's impossible to even, I mean, I said that they were shocked at what they were seeing, but you can't even really guarantee that they saw anything.
No.
Anyway, Mary was finally rescued, and the following month, Mary remained in hospital, but she was set on making sure the police caught this guy who attacked her. I don't know if you've noticed, I've been taking Mary's approach here because she did not want this man to have power in her life or in the media. So she calls him the attacker. And that is what I have been doing as well.
No, I've caught on to that. Not necessarily the reason behind it, but that he has not been named.
I did give his name, but then I haven't since.
Right.
So Mary, in case we hadn't already decided that she was strong and determined.
And badass.
Yeah. She wanted her attacker found, and she was able to recall with incredible detail enough about the attacker that a quality sketch was generated and released to the public. Again, part of what she says helped her survive the ordeal was a voice telling her that she needed to survive in order to prevent this guy from hurting someone else or killing anyone. Quickly, a neighbor of the attacker saw the sketch, recognized the man in it, and called the police.
Oh, thank God for good neighbors. Well, yes. For people who do the right thing that are also neighbors to awful people.
Yeah. When the police went to the attacker's home, they found cigarettes that belonged to Mary and some burnt clothing remnants that they believed to be Mary's as well, and a spotless van that had been cleaned with the help from what I can only assume was a different neighbor than the one who called the police on him. He had gone so far as to remove the carpeting in the van entirely.
Okay. That's not suspicious even a little bit.
No, I imagine that this girl who survived this ordeal was probably newsworthy, and he was aware that he had not, in fact, killed her.
He did set her free, and I hope it bites him in the ass.
Anyway, so they arrived to find the only thing more suspicious than blood and whatever else in the van. And the attacker says that he had in fact picked up Mary, but he also picked up Larry and Pedro, male hitchhikers. And the group of them went to a bar, smoked dope, and they paid Mary for sex. And after he finished, he fell asleep, and Larry drove the attacker's van to San Francisco with Mary's clothes in it, but no Mary to be seen.
Oh, okay. Sure, Larry and Pedro.
And they all paid her for sex.
And where was that money?
Well, I think the part that I get hung up on is that they apparently paid for consensual sex with a 15-year-old.
Obviously, but by the same... the whole thing is preposterous. Why would anyone believe this?
Well, I know that he definitely did not sexually assault her, and he certainly didn't attack her.
Was statutory rape a thing at this time?
Sex work in California in 1978 was illegal. And then, yes, statutory. Anyone under the age of 18, also illegal.
Yes, all of it illegal.
So he would admit to some criminal behavior, but not accept responsibility for the actual crimes that he committed. He's a treat, right?
Yeah, I mean, a dirtbag is a dirtbag, but this guy is worse than that. I feel like if you can commit yourself to doing this dastardly deed and using a hatchet to chop off some poor girl's arms and then throw her down, was it a ravine? Was it a canyon?
Yeah, it was just kind of off the, I can't remember the exact word.
30 feet drop though, right?
Right.
If you can do all of that, you should be able to own up to the truth. You got caught. You did it. It's too late to be ashamed of your handiwork.
I mean, she survived. You know she was conscious through the entire attack. So, and you know that you and her, I guess what he was trying to do is just give them a different version of events and hope that he would be seen as more credible as some 51-year-old guy. I mean, grandfatherly
their
figure.
Ages are literally the inverse of each other.
Yeah. I can't believe that teenager. I mean, okay, so yes, her arms did get removed, but that had nothing to do with me.
Yeah, stupid. Dumb man.
Yeah. So he was charged and taken to trial, and Mary, like you said, a badass, testified against him, recounting the attack for the court and identifying the man on trial as the same man who attacked her. When she was done, she had to walk past him, and he said to her that he would finish this job if it takes him the rest of his life.
Did anyone else hear it? Was it audible?
I don't actually know.
Okay.
He was found guilty of kidnapping, mayhem, attempted murder, forcible rape, sodomy, and forced oral copulation.
Wow. Surely all of that added up to a life sentence.
So despite the judge giving the attacker the maximum sentence and wanting him to spend the rest of his life in prison, consecutive sentences couldn't be given for each separate felony. So the most he was able to get was 14 years and 4 months.
Why was that not possible?
Something about the sentencing laws in California in the 70s.
So he couldn't get consecutive terms for the many different crimes he committed.
Correct. He was able to get at most 14 years and 4 months, which is what the judge sentenced him to.
What a disappointing shit show.
Yeah.
She was, oh my God.
He cut her arms off, stole her innocence, stripped her of her dreams, and left her for dead.
Sodomized her, forcibly raped and penetrated and sexually assaulted her.
The most he was able to get was less than 14 and a half years.
That's less time than Mary had been alive at that point.
The thing, I understand why to an extent, but it always baffles me that just because you're bad at killing, you get a lighter sentence than if you actually were successful, because the intent was to kill.
Yeah, that's exactly. And he thought he had done so. In his mind, he had committed murder.
Right.
Let's treat him as such.
Right. Charge him with the crime he thought he did.
Yeah, perfect. I love that.
Although then I guess we get into a slippery slope there.
Sure.
Because there are plenty of people who commit crimes that don't think that they committed a crime. So I think that we both agree that this was a blow. Because despite the fact that the legal system did not necessarily account for emotional and mental trauma, Mary was literally physically traumatized and had to relearn how to live.
Yeah.
She had no hands. She couldn't just try to go back to normal and move on with her life after the trial. She was having to rehabilitate herself and figure out what normal looked like after her attack. Doctors had to take parts of her leg to save her right arm. So despite her previous aspirations to be a dancer, she was now unable to dance. Because Mary was artistic and enjoyed tinkering with things, the prosthetic arms that she began using within weeks of her attack had been modified with random parts by her to customize them and make them more suited to her and her use of them.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, are you ready to get mad?
Yeah.
Back to the attacker. You remember his sentence?
Yeah, 14 years and 4 months.
Even though the judge wanted him to have a lengthier sentence, that was the most that the judge could give him.
Okay.
He was released in 1987 after serving 7 years and 9 months.
For what? Was he paroled? Was there good behavior?
He was a good little boy in prison, and he was rewarded for good behavior by virtually having his sentence cut in half, give or take 7 months.
What a monumentous miscarriage of justice. And so then he left and did really good things.
He had been rehabilitated. I mean,
to the full extent.
His behavior in prison was obviously going to reflect what his behavior outside of prison would be.
100% indicative.
Surprisingly, people were outraged that he was released.
Well, that was unkind of them.
Yeah. And the outrage from him being released at least did inspire a new bill to be passed, which uses his surname and makes prisoners whose crime involved torture ineligible for early parole. And their sentences can be 25 to life now.
Ugh. Well, I guess there is one piece of good news.
Yeah, a silver lining, I suppose. But we're not done. Despite the passing of that bill, the attacker was out, and California was mad about it.
As they rightfully should be.
Yeah, he tried to settle in various Californian towns, but was unwelcome, to say the least, and he was ran off by angry mobs. I'm assuming with torches and pitchforks, but who knows?
That's how to mob.
Do you have a guess where he headed to after the state of California shunned him?
I think he would move somewhere either desolate or somewhere where it's normal to do crazy things.
Okay.
So, Montana?
Montana?
It's very...
normal to do crazy things or desolate?
Desolate.
Okay.
I think Wyoming is pretty desolate too. Maybe Florida.
Florida is where he went.
That's where it's normal to do crazy things.
Do you know, that might be true, but actually their laws surrounding the information that their news sources has access to is so much, like the standard is so different than other places that's why all of their headlines...
They have to report it.
Right, they have to report all of the crazy shit. So every other state has the liberty of not having to, but in Florida, and that's probably why Florida man is a thing. Yeah. So the attacker moved to Florida in 1990, and 7 years after the move, on February 19th, 1997, with a few more petty, non-violent crimes under his belt in the meantime, a house painter of a home near the attacker called the police. He was able to see into the attacker's residence and saw what he believed to be a naked man covered in blood standing over and attacking a woman.
Oh my God.
When the police arrived, they were able to confirm that the painter had in fact witnessed the brutal attack and murder of a woman named Roxanne Hayes.
Of course, he would experience recidivism. Of course, a man this sick, sadistic, and twisted would end up killing somebody. Anyone could have seen this coming.
The judge did see it coming, though. That's the thing. The judge wanted to give him life. The judge wanted him to never see another free day. The system would not allow the judge to prevent this.
Well, again, a miscarriage of justice. A broken system that would allow someone like this to go free so that then they are free. But you know what? The judge might have wanted that. They didn't have to release him after only half his sentence had been completed.
You're right. That wasn't...
Someone could have been more proactive. Something should have been done. He should have at least served the entirety of the 14 years and 4 months.
Yeah, I think whoever did ultimately release him wasn't looking at Mary with her 2 prosthetic arms and years of trauma.
Yeah, obviously
when they were making
not.
that decision. So Roxanne was 31. She was a mother of 3, and she was supporting her family with sex work. She had arranged with the attacker to go to his house for $20. So the attacker was covered in blood, and Roxanne's body showed signs of being repeatedly stabbed above the waist. And obviously the attacker was taken into custody and went to trial, which is a little surprising to me, but clearly he had to go in and defend himself. I mean, naturally, Roxanne had been trying to rob him and grabbed the knife he'd had in the living room.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. So he still likes to lie.
Whoa. I think he still likes to alter a differing version of events.
Talk about fabrication.
They began to struggle, and then once the dust settled, she asked him to hold her. So as they nakedly embraced, the attacker realized that she must have accidentally and unknowingly to herself been stabbed in the stomach during the fight for the knife.
So she accidentally stabbed herself in the stomach multiple times.
Yes.
Okay. Makes sense nowhere.
But then also wanted to be held by him. And they were struggling randomly for this knife nude. So I guess part of the story was that they were engaging in sex.
This attacker was fucking dumb.
Yeah.
He was dumb. D-U-M-B. Vicious. Awful. Evil. But he was not smart.
Well, there was a witness who saw him attacking her.
Well, and what a poor criminal.
I mean, I think that keeps us in business here.
Yeah, but I mean, such savagery. It's like he doesn't have the ability to think ahead of how he should, I don't know, conduct any of these crimes.
It definitely confuses me that these are the only 2, because they don't feel like the only 2.
Right. You did say he had committed other petty crimes, right?
Right. Nonviolent.
Okay.
But it feels a lot like 0 to 100, even when you consider the nonviolent petty crimes.
Right.
So nobody bought that story.
Wow.
And he was found guilty. And Mary trekked over to Florida to deliver a statement at his sentencing, telling the jury about her attack and the aftermath of it, how she fought to survive her ordeal to prevent this exact situation from happening, the legal miscarriage of justice that cost Roxanne Hayes her life, and to urge them to not allow the system to fail anyone else by sentencing him to anything that might allow him to walk free again. And the judge sentenced him to...
I'm hoping at least life.
Death.
Okay.
As we know.
I'm not really a death penalty kind of person.
Same.
But sometimes you earn it.
I think the primary reason that I'm not behind it is because it's not a 100% perfect system.
Right.
So if there's the risk of anybody dying who's innocent, we shouldn't be operating in that realm. But there's no question of his guilt.
Right.
He has a survivor who I think what he did to Mary was worthy of the death penalty. And then we've got him tricking Roxanne to coming to his home in the hopes of making some small amount of money to help her pay for her, support her family, and then viciously murders her. And there's a witness to it. He undoubtedly is responsible for these.
So for me, in terms of the death penalty, I think that no human or humans under typical rational circumstances should be able to determine that someone else's punishment should be to die. But in instances such as this one, I'm not upset with the verdict.
Right.
And so it's kind of a question of, I don't necessarily believe in the death penalty, but there are some cases and instances where it's issued and I have no issue with it.
I'm not losing any sleep.
No, I feel like knowing that this man will not be able to harm anyone else, regardless of circumstance, is really comforting.
I agree.
And maybe Mary Vincent, which isn't to say that she wasn't able to psychologically heal and rest, but I think for her sake and her understanding of the world and justice, it feels right and necessary.
Yeah. I think that she didn't have to cross the country.
No.
And go speak. I think one, she knew that writing a letter wouldn't be anywhere near as effective as her being there in person. But she didn't have to do that. I think that she was very upset that she had survived to prevent this from happening. And the system failed Roxanne.
She
failed
did her
Mary.
part.
Right.
Mary did her part.
Especially after seeing him in court the first time and him telling her, I will finish this job no matter how long it takes me. The fact that she probably lived in terror, especially after he was released.
Yeah.
That he would come back and find her, would hunt her.
And the unfortunate truth is that he did finish the job. It wasn't with Mary Vincent, but he did finish the job.
Yeah, with death row being a slow-paced process that it requires appeals immediately and all of that. At the time of the murder of Roxanne Hayes, the attacker was 69 years old. And on December 28th, 2001, in a prison hospital, he died of cancer. Probably a more dignified death than he deserved, in my opinion, but
yeah,
that's just my opinion.
Cancer was too good for him.
There's nothing that ever gets, I haven't even seen it. It's just a picture that my mind has created, but I cannot ever unsee her seeing her arm holding on to him, but it not being attached to her. So like I said, Mary had an affinity for the arts. And one night, after being unable to fall asleep, she got up and began to draw. After sketching for a while, her face looked back at her from the page she had drawn herself, and she continued to draw strong women, typically sketching a type of action figure with a sword and muscles, but also with a delicate grace to them. She worked as an artist, using family photographs to draw portraits, slightly altering any seeming imperfections or problems that people typically had with their own appearance. Mary went on to get married. She had 2 sons who are both in their 30s now, I believe. And she did divorce her first husband, who she had the children with, but she is now married to Tony McGriff and she uses his surname. And actually, since she met him, she has swapped creating artwork as a means of escaping her depression and instead lives her life with Tony. So it's like she was drawing and she was using these creative outlets to help her through her trauma, but something about life with Tony makes that escapism unnecessary anymore. And so in the 14 years since she met Tony, she stopped needing to create art because he helped fill whatever void the artwork was filling during that time. And that's the story of Mary Vincent McGriff, a survivor who worked tirelessly to save her life, not for herself, but to protect others from her attacker, and who is just a badass.
Yeah, a survivor, a badass, a hero. This kind of unshakable and almost believable testament to, like you said earlier, perseverance. Because there were so many times, regardless of whether it's the case or not, I feel like I would have wilted in the face of whatever it is that she was facing. From being attacked, being assaulted, having to relive that trauma during an initial court case, then having the experience of seeing him only facing 14 years and 4 months.
I think even before that, working with the sketch artist and him being out there and free and not knowing if or when he was going to be caught and then what that would look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you just shared a story of unmeasurable strength.
Yes. She's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
There aren't words to describe what Mary Vincent McGriff is.
She definitely supersedes what we would expect of like a typical person to be able to handle and to do. And she was so young.
Yeah. 120%. Her story is almost unbelievable. Great job.
Thanks. A complete list of sources and any links can be found in the show notes.
And that's all we've got for this episode. If you enjoyed listening and want to hear more, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a review.
Recommend us to a friend, and if you feel so inclined, go ahead and visit our page on Patreon. Right now we have a supportive bestie tier where you just kind of
testies.
No, not testies. Where you can just help us finance this little project that we have been working on for a year at this point.
We love it, we fund it, we do it, it's fantastic, but my God, would it be so nice for you to join at the supportive bestie tier. But if $2 is too deep in your pockets, never fear.
We understand.
Wait, is there a free tier?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a free tier. So, I mean...
I'm technically at the free tier, but this is not free for me.
8 quarters. It's 8 quarters.
A month. Okay.
That's it.
Are you gonna do your line?
Oh, make sure you're following us at End of Crime Pod on Instagram.
Our email address is endofcrimepod@gmail.com, so feel free to reach out with questions or episode suggestions.
And thank you for listening.
Until the next crime.